My name is Sarah. I'm 34 years old, and I really thought I had found the love of my life when I met Mark. We met at a coffee shop in Boston. In that way you only see in movies, you know? I had dropped my entire purse on the floor, and he appeared out of nowhere to help me pick everything up. Our eyes met when he handed me back my favorite red lipstick, and I swear I felt that butterfly feeling in my stomach that everyone talks about, but few actually feel. He had a crooked smile, the kind that melts anyone, and brown eyes that seemed to see straight into my soul. We ended up talking for hours in that coffee shop, and when I realized it, it was already night, and I had completely lost track of time. He was everything I had always dreamed of: kind, funny, thoughtful, and most importantly, he made me feel special in a way that no one had ever done before. Before I continue my story, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications for more real stories like this one, because what comes next will leave you speechless. And tell me in the comments, have you ever experienced something like this? Where are you watching from? I need to know that I'm not alone in this, that there are other people who will understand what I went through. Because guys, what happened to me was so surreal, so painful, that even today I wake up some days thinking it was all a horrible nightmare, but it wasn't. It was real. And if you're going through something similar, or know someone who has, stay here with me until the end, because this story needs to be told. Our relationship was like a modern fairy tale. Mark worked as a civil engineer, and I was an elementary school teacher. We complemented each other in a way that seemed impossible. He would wake up early every Sunday to make pancakes for me, just the way I liked them, with those fresh blueberries he bought at the neighborhood market. We would walk hand in hand along the Charles River, planning our future together, talking about the children we were going to have, the house we were going to buy, the places we were going to travel. Every moment with him seemed magical, you know? I remember one time he prepared a surprise picnic at Boston Common with all my favorite foods and stayed there with me until the stars appeared, making me laugh with silly stories from his work. It was in those moments that I was absolutely certain that he was the man of my life, my forever. After 2 years of dating, he proposed to me in the most beautiful way possible. It was during a trip we took to Cape Cod, on an almost deserted beach at sunset. He had planned everything down to the smallest details, even hired a hidden photographer to capture the moment. When he knelt in the sand, with that beautiful ring in his hand, trembling with nervousness but with his eyes shining with love, I couldn't even answer properly, because I was crying so much. Of course I said yes, 1,000 times yes. We got married 6 months later, in a small but perfect ceremony, with our closest family and friends. My older sister, Rebecca, was my maid of honor, and I remember how happy she seemed for me that day, hugging Mark as if he were her own brother. If I had known what she was hiding even back then, I would have run from that altar. The first years of our marriage were simply perfect. We bought a small but cozy house in Cambridge, with a backyard where Mark planted red roses for me. He was the kind of husband everyone wanted to have. He helped with household chores without me having to ask, always remembered important dates, surprised me with little gifts for no reason at all, just because. We had that nice routine of a couple in love, you know? Watching series cuddled up on the couch, cooking together on weekends, making love with all the passion in the world, and then talking until the early hours of the morning. I was completely in love with that man, and I was sure he felt the same way about me. Every look from him made me feel like I was the only woman in the world, the most special, the most loved. Our family was very close, especially Rebecca and I. We had always been very close, even though she was 7 years older than me. She had married before me to David, and they had a beautiful son, Tommy, who at the time of this story had just turned 6. I loved that boy, as if he were my own son, always buying little presents for him, taking him out, spoiling him too much, according to Rebecca. Mark also had a special affection for Tommy, and they would spend hours playing together at family gatherings. Seeing my husband with my nephew always filled me with hope about the wonderful father he would be to our own children. We had been trying to get pregnant for a few months, full of plans and dreams for the future we were going to build together. I remember talking to Rebecca about it, how she encouraged me and said I was going to be an incredible mother, and that our children would grow up together as cousin siblings. Everything seemed so perfect, so right, so destined to work out. Things started to change in such a subtle way that I almost didn't notice at first. It was about 4 months before everything fell apart. Mark started working later, coming home too tired to talk properly with me. He said he had a big project at the office, an important bridge they were building, and that it needed extra attention. I believed him, of course, because trust is the foundation of any relationship, right? But there was something different about him, a distance I couldn't explain. He looked at his phone with a strange frequency, and every time I got close, he would quickly turn off the screen, as if he were hiding something. When I asked who it was, he always had a ready answer. A coworker, the boss, spam, anything that seemed normal, but that deep in my heart made me uneasy. The kisses and hugs that were once constant started to become rare, mechanical, without that passion from before. When we made love, it felt like he was there only in body, you know? His mind was somewhere else, distant, inaccessible. I tried to start conversations about it, asked if everything was okay, if he was happy with me, if there was anything I could do to help with work stress. He always reassured me with that smile I loved so much, saying everything was great, that he was just tired, that he loved me more than anything. And I wanted so badly to believe him, guys. I clung to every word of his as if it were a lifeline, because the alternative was to accept that something was fundamentally wrong in my perfect marriage, and I wasn't ready for that. So I convinced myself it was just a phase, that every marriage goes through moments like this, that soon everything would return to normal. But then things started happening that were impossible to ignore. Mark started taking showers as soon as he got home, even before giving me a hello kiss. He said he was sweaty from work, but it was winter in Boston, and it made no sense at all. His clothes came with different smells, perfumes that weren't mine, that I didn't recognize. Once I found a receipt from an expensive French restaurant in his pants pocket, from a day he said he had worked late and eaten a sandwich at his desk. When I asked about it, he turned red, stuttered a bit, and said he had taken some important clients to dinner and forgot to tell me. The explanation made sense, but the way he said it, that nervousness, that lack of eye contact, all of that screamed that something was wrong. I started feeling crazy, paranoid, that way you feel when your instinct is telling you one thing, but your head is trying to convince you otherwise. The worst of all was the silence. We had always talked about everything, shared every detail of our day, laughed together at the silly things that happened. But suddenly, conversations became superficial, empty, full of uncomfortable pauses. I tried to fill the silence with stories from school, talking about my students, about the challenges of the day, but Mark just nodded, clearly not paying attention. It was as if he was there, but at the same time completely absent. I found myself talking to myself, and the loneliness I felt even being married was suffocating. I started crying in the shower, where he couldn't see me, wondering what I had done wrong, why the man who had sworn to love me forever was pulling away from me like this. I relived every recent moment, every conversation, every interaction, trying to find the exact point where everything had started to fall apart. I tried to talk to someone about it, but who? My mother had always been very conservative, the type who thinks women have to put up with everything quietly to keep the marriage. My friends were nice, but none were close enough for me to open up about something so intimate, so painful. So I ended up talking to Rebecca. I called her on a Sunday afternoon, when Mark had left saying he was going to the office to review some projects. I told her about the changes in his behavior, about my fears and insecurities, about how I was feeling neglected and alone. Rebecca listened carefully and said exactly what I needed to hear at that moment, that I was overreacting, that men sometimes get stressed with work, that I should give him space and focus on myself. She suggested that I book a massage, buy a new outfit, plan a romantic dinner to win my husband back, and I believed her, because she was my sister, my confidant, my best friend. If I had known she was lying to me at that moment, if I had known what she already knew and was hiding, I would have realized sooner that the problem wasn't work stress. So I did what she suggested. I bought new lingerie, those expensive ones from boutiques, made an appointment at the salon to get my hair and nails done, planned a special dinner with Mark's favorite food. I sent him a message during the day saying I had a surprise waiting at home, with those suggestive emojis we used to use. But he replied that he would have to work late again, that a problem had come up with the project, and he couldn't leave. My heart sank in my chest. I called him, almost begging for him to come home, saying it was important, that I needed him. He sighed on the other end of the line in that tired and irritated way and said we could do that on the weekend. I hung up the phone and cried for hours in the kitchen, looking at that beautiful table I had prepared, at that food that was getting cold, at that lingerie I had put on full of hope. It was at that moment that I really started to accept that my marriage was in serious trouble, and that maybe Mark didn't love me anymore the way I loved him. Everything changed on a Tuesday, March 15th. I'll never forget that date, because it was the day my life turned upside down. Mark had left early for work, as always. I was at home because I had taken the day off to take care of some personal things. Around 10 in the morning, I received a call from the engineering company where Mark worked. It was the secretary, asking if Mark was okay, because he hadn't shown up at the office and hadn't notified them he was going to be absent. My blood ran cold. I asked her if she was sure, if it wasn't a mistake. She confirmed, said his boss was worried because they had an important meeting scheduled. I hung up the phone with trembling hands, my heart beating so hard I could hear it in my ears. If Mark wasn't at work, where the hell was he? And why had he lied to me? I tried calling his cell phone several times, but all calls went straight to voicemail. I sent messages, each one more desperate than the last, asking where he was, if everything was okay, begging him to answer me. Nothing. Absolute silence. I was starting to get really scared, imagining all kinds of horrible scenarios. An accident, a robbery, a kidnapping, I don't know. I even thought about calling the police, but something told me to wait, to investigate a little more first. That's when I remembered that Mark had installed a location app on our phones, one of those for couples, saying it was for safety, so we'd always know where each other was in case of emergency. I had never used it before because I always trusted him completely, but at that moment, with that sinking feeling and that fear taking over me, I opened the app with trembling fingers. His location was active, and he was at a hotel in downtown Boston, one of those boutique, romantic, expensive ones. My world collapsed at that exact second. All the pieces of the puzzle started fitting together in my head with painful clarity. The lies about working late, the showers as soon as he got home, the strange perfumes, the emotional distance, everything made sense now. Mark was cheating on me, my husband, the love of my life, the man who had sworn eternal fidelity to me, was with another woman in a hotel room while I was at home like an idiot, worried about him. The pain I felt at that moment was physical, visceral, as if someone had ripped my heart out of my chest with bare hands. I fell to my knees on the kitchen floor, sobbing so loudly that I was sure the neighbors could hear, but I didn't care. After the first impact passed, an anger started burning inside me, a fury I had never felt before in my life. I wasn't going to stay home waiting for explanations. I wasn't going to let him continue making a fool out of me. I threw on any clothes, grabbed the car keys, and drove to that hotel like crazy, barely seeing the road because of the tears that wouldn't stop falling. Boston traffic seemed to conspire against me. Every red light was an eternity. Every slow driver in front of me made me more desperate. When I finally got to the hotel, I parked any which way and practically ran inside, not even caring about how I must have looked. My hair was a mess. My face was red and swollen from crying so much. My clothes were all wrinkled, but none of that mattered at that moment. The hotel was one of those fancy ones, with an elegant lobby, super polite and discreet staff. I went straight to the reception, trying to maintain composure but failing miserably. I asked if there was a Mark Johnson staying there. The receptionist looked at me with that professional but clearly uncomfortable expression, saying she couldn't give information about guests. I exploded. I started talking loudly, saying I was his wife, that he was there with another woman, that I had a right to know. People in the lobby started looking, and the receptionist, visibly embarrassed, checked the system and confirmed that yes, there was a Mark Johnson registered in room 412. She tried to stop me from going up, said she was going to call security, but I was already running towards the elevators, my heart beating so hard I thought I was going to have a heart attack right there. When I got to room 412, I stood in front of that door for a few seconds that seemed like hours, like my hand was raised to knock, but I was paralyzed, because part of me knew that as soon as I knocked on that door, as soon as I saw what was on the other side, my life would never be the same. There would be no going back. But I needed to know, needed to see with my own eyes, needed to confirm that betrayal that was killing me inside. So I knocked. I knocked hard, several times, screaming Mark's name, demanding that he open that door immediately. I heard movement on the other side, muffled voices, hurried steps, and then the door opened, and there he was, my husband, with messy hair, wearing only sweatpants, clearly just out of bed. The expression on his face when he saw me was of pure terror, as if he had seen a ghost. I pushed him and entered the room, and what I saw made me want to die right there. The bed was unmade, clothes scattered on the floor, 2 half-empty champagne glasses on the nightstand. And coming out of the bathroom, wearing only one of my husband's shirts, her hair still wet from the shower, was her. But it wasn't a stranger like I expected. It wasn't a coworker. It wasn't a random affair. It was my sister, Rebecca, my older sister, my confidant, the person I trusted most in the world after Mark. She was there, in that hotel room, half naked, with my husband. The world stopped. I literally couldn't breathe, couldn't process what I was seeing. My vision became blurry. My ears started ringing. My legs went weak. It was impossible. It had to be a nightmare. It had to be my mind playing a cruel trick on me. But it wasn't. It was real. Painfully, devastatingly real. I don't remember exactly what happened in the next few minutes. It's like my brain shut down to protect me from the unbearable pain of that scene. I know I screamed, because my throat was hoarse afterwards. I know Rebecca tried to approach me, saying something I couldn't process, and that I pushed her so hard she hit the wall. I know Mark tried to hold me, calm me down, but I struggled like crazy, hitting his chest, scratching, kicking, wanting to hurt him as much as he had hurt me. I was out of control, consumed by a mixture of anger, pain, betrayal, and despair that I never imagined was possible to feel. Hotel employees appeared at the door, probably alerted by the receptionist or other guests who heard the scandal. But I didn't even care about the audience. Let everyone see. Let everyone know what kind of people my husband and sister were. Somehow, I managed to get out of that room, that hotel, that nightmare scene. I got in my car and drove aimlessly, not knowing where I was going, just needing to get away from there as fast as possible. Tears fell nonstop, blurring my vision, and it's a miracle I didn't cause an accident. Eventually, I stopped in an empty parking lot, collapsed over the steering wheel, and cried like I had never cried in my life. It was hours there, just me and my pain, reliving every moment of my life with Mark, every interaction with Rebecca, wondering how I had been so blind, so stupid, so naive. How long had this been going on? Months? Years? Since when had my sister and my husband been betraying me behind my back, laughing in my face, sleeping together while I dreamed of a happy future with him? The messages started arriving on my phone, dozens of them, from Mark, from Rebecca, even from David, my sister's husband, who apparently had received some news of what had happened. But I couldn't read them. I didn't want to hear excuses, explanations, requests for forgiveness. There was nothing they could say that would change what I had seen, what they had done to me. I turned off my phone and stayed there, in the car, until it got completely dark. I had nowhere to go. I couldn't go back home because Mark would be there. I couldn't go to my parents' house because I wasn't ready to face the questions, the judgments, their disappointment. I ended up going to a cheap hotel, one of those roadside ones, paid in cash, and locked the room door as if I were protecting myself from the whole world. That night, I didn't sleep a single minute. I lay on the hard bed, looking at the stained ceiling, reliving everything obsessively. I remembered all the times Rebecca had given me advice about my marriage, saying I was overreacting, that I should trust Mark more. Of course she said that. She was sleeping with him. I remembered family dinners, where I saw Mark and Rebecca talking animatedly, and I thought it was beautiful how my husband got along with my family. How many times had they exchanged secret glances right in front of me and I didn't notice? How many times had they touched each other, desired each other, planned their meetings while I was there, completely oblivious, believing I had a perfect family and a happy marriage? The humiliation was almost worse than the pain of betrayal. I felt stupid, pathetic, laughable. The following days were a blur of pain and self-destruction. I called the school saying I was sick, which wasn't a lie because I really was sick, It's just that it was my soul that was destroyed, not my body. I stayed locked in that cheap hotel room, alternating between crying until I had no more tears and being completely numb, not feeling anything. I couldn't eat. Just the smell of food made me nauseous. I lost weight quickly. My face became hollow. My eyes became sunken and surrounded by purple dark circles. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror and didn't recognize the woman who was there. Where had the cheerful Sarah gone, confident, in love with life? In her place, there was only a ghost, an empty shell of a person who had been completely broken by the worst imaginable betrayal. Mark managed to find me after 3 days. I don't know how. He probably tracked my credit card or something. He showed up at the room door, knocking insistently, begging me to let him in, saying we needed to talk. I didn't have the strength to fight, didn't have strength for anything, so I just opened the door. His expression when he saw me was one of shock and horror. He tried to hug me, but I pulled away, my whole body rejecting his touch. He cried, guys. He really cried, tears running down his face, saying he was sorry, that it had been a terrible mistake, that he loved me and that we would get through this together. But his words were empty, meaningless, because how do you get over a betrayal with your own sister? How do you trust again in someone who broke their vows in the cruelest way possible? I asked how long. He didn't want to answer, but I insisted. I screamed. I demanded to know. 8 months. They had been having an affair for 8 months. Almost a year of my life lived in a complete lie. I sent him away. I said I wanted a divorce, that I never wanted to see him again. He tried to argue, say we could try couples therapy, that we could rebuild our trust. I laughed. A bitter laugh, with no humor at all, that sounded more like an injured animal. Trust? What trust? He had destroyed any possibility of trust when he decided to sleep with my sister, when he decided to look me in the eyes every day and lie, when he decided to make plans for our future while he was building a secret present with someone else. There was no going back. There was no forgiveness. There was no more us. He finally left, shoulders slumped, defeated. And for the first time since everything had happened, I felt something besides pain. I felt anger, a cold, determined anger that gave me the energy I needed to start reacting. They had destroyed me, but I wasn't going to let that destruction be permanent. I was going to rebuild myself, even if it killed me in the process. The first thing I did was call a divorce lawyer that a friend had recommended to me years ago when her husband had cheated on her. At the time, I had found it so sad, never imagining that one day I would need that number. The lawyer, a serious man named Robert, received me the next day at his office in downtown Boston. When I told my story, including the detail that the betrayal had been with my own sister, even he, who had probably heard everything, was visibly shocked. He assured me that Massachusetts had favorable laws for proven cases of infidelity, and that I had rights over the house, part of Mark's assets, everything. But I wasn't interested in money or assets. I just wanted my freedom back, my life back, my dignity back. I signed all the necessary papers right there, my hands trembling as I wrote my name, making official the end of my marriage. I went back home for the first time in 5 days, but only because Mark had agreed to stay with a friend while I got my things. The house that had once been my refuge, my home, now seemed like a mausoleum full of painful memories. Every room had a memory of him, of us, of what I thought we were. I went quickly, throwing clothes and personal objects into suitcases without worrying about organization. I took photos that were only mine, important documents, my favorite books, and left behind everything that had any connection to Mark. The wedding ring I left right in the middle of the kitchen table, along with a simple note, "You can keep it. Clearly it didn't mean anything to you." I closed the door of that house and didn't look back. Literally. I kept my eyes forward, focused on the uncertain but at least honest future that was ahead of me. My mother finally found out what had happened when I showed up at her door with 3 suitcases and red eyes from crying. I had avoided telling her because I knew how difficult it would be, but there was no way to postpone it anymore. When I explained everything, about Mark and Rebecca, about the 8 months of betrayal, about the hotel, my mother was in shock. She cried with me, hugged me tight, said all the right things a mother should say, that it wasn't my fault, that I deserved better, that she was on my side. But when I said I wanted the divorce, that I was going to cut Rebecca completely out of my life, my mother hesitated. "But she's your sister, Sarah. Family is family. You'll get through this." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After everything that had happened, my own mother was asking me to forgive the most painful betrayal anyone can suffer. At that moment, I realized I couldn't stay there, that I needed a space of my own, where no one would judge me or pressure me to forgive the unforgivable. I grabbed my suitcases and left my mother's house that same night, checking into another hotel, this one a bit better. While looking for an apartment to rent, Rebecca tried to call me countless times. She sent hundreds of messages, emails, even physical letters that arrived at my work. I didn't open any of them. I blocked her number, filtered the emails, returned the letters unopened. There was absolutely nothing she could say that would make a difference. She had chosen to sleep with my husband, chosen to betray me in the worst possible way, chosen to destroy our sisterly relationship because of a passing physical attraction. And the worst part is that she had looked me in the eyes, listened to my venting about my marriage being strange, given me advice to trust Mark more, all while she was the reason my marriage was falling apart. There was no forgiveness for that. Not in my head, not in my heart. Rebecca was dead to me, as dead as my marriage. I found a small but charming apartment in Somerville, near the red line of the subway. It was a compact studio, just one room, but it had large windows that let in lots of natural light, and it was mine, completely mine. I bought simple furniture at IKEA, decorated with plants and colorful paintings, created a space that had no bad memories associated with it. For the first time in weeks, I managed to sleep through the night without waking up in the middle of a nightmare about Mark and Rebecca. The apartment became my sanctuary, my healing place, where I could process everything that had happened in my own time, without pressure from anyone. Some nights I still cried myself to sleep, but they were fewer and fewer, and the tears were more about mourning what I had lost than despair. I went back to work after 2 weeks off. My colleagues knew something had happened, because it was impossible to hide the marks of pain on my face, but they were discreet, didn't ask invasive questions. The children in my class, with that brutal honesty that only children have, asked why I was sad, and I said I was going through a difficult time, but that I was going to be okay. And you know what? Being with them helped me a lot. Seeing those innocent little faces, hearing their laughter, getting involved with the work I loved, all of that reminded me that there were still good things in life, that my world hadn't ended just because my marriage had. Gradually, I started becoming functional again, smiling for real sometimes, reconnecting with parts of me that had been buried by pain. I started therapy with a psychologist named Dr. Michelle, who had experience with betrayal trauma. In the first sessions, I only cried, unable to properly articulate the mess of emotions I felt. But she was patient, gave me space to feel everything without judgment, and gradually I started to untangle all that confusion. I discovered I had much more anger than I realized, not just at Mark and Rebecca, but at myself for not seeing the signs before, for being too weak to suspect. Dr. Michelle helped me understand that it wasn't weakness to trust the people you love, that the fault wasn't mine, that I had been a victim of two people who made selfish and cruel choices. Slowly, very slowly, I started to forgive myself, to understand that I deserved better, that betrayal said everything about their character and nothing about my value as a person. 3 months after discovering the betrayal, the divorce was finalized. It was surprisingly quick and simple, because Mark didn't contest anything. He signed all the papers, agreed with the division of assets that the lawyer proposed, and kept the house I didn't want anymore anyway. On the day I received the final divorce documents by mail, I sat on the floor of my apartment and had a strange reaction. I laughed, not from happiness, but from relief. I was officially free. I was no longer Mark's wife. I no longer had any legal connection to that man who had hurt me so much. I could finally start turning this page of my life and write a new chapter, one where I was in control of the narrative. I started going out with my friends again, something I had stopped doing during the marriage without even realizing it. We went to bars, restaurants, even to a concert I had been wanting to see for months. I still wasn't ready to think about dating or getting romantically involved with anyone. The wound was still too fresh, but I was ready to live again, to have fun, to remember that I was a complete person alone, without needing a man to define me. The girls supported me a lot, listened to my venting when I needed to talk about everything, distracted me when I needed to forget, respected my time and my healing process. Having that support network was fundamental to my recovery. But there was still one thing I hadn't resolved: the confrontation with Rebecca. I knew that eventually I would have to see her at some family gathering, some event, and I couldn't keep running forever. My mother had called me a few times trying to mediate, saying Rebecca was devastated, that she regretted it very much, that she wanted to talk to me, but I still wasn't ready. The anger was still too great, the wound still too open. I needed more time, more healing, more distance before I could look at her without wanting to scream or cry or both at the same time. So I continued keeping my distance, declining invitations to family events, creating excuses when necessary, protecting myself from the inevitable pain that seeing her would bring. And then October came, 6 months after discovering the betrayal. Tommy, my nephew, Rebecca's son, would turn 7. My mother called me personally to invite me to his birthday party, which would be at Rebecca's house the following Saturday. "Please, Sarah," my mother begged. "I know it's difficult, but it's Tommy's birthday. He misses you, asks about you every week. You can go for the child. You don't even have to talk to Rebecca if you don't want to." My heart tightened. Tommy wasn't to blame for anything. He was just an innocent child caught in the middle of this whole mess. I loved that boy, and he didn't deserve to lose his aunt because of his mother's mistakes. After thinking a lot, after discussing with Dr. Michelle in therapy, I decided I would go. Not for Rebecca, not for my mother, but for Tommy. He deserved to have his aunt at his birthday. I could be strong for a few hours. I could do this. On the day of the party, I spent hours getting ready. Not out of vanity, but because I needed to feel strong, in control, powerful. I chose a navy blue dress that always made me feel confident, did my hair and makeup carefully, put on my favorite perfume. When I looked at myself in the mirror before leaving, I saw a different woman from the one who had fallen to her knees in that hotel room 6 months ago. I still had the scars, the pain was still there, but I was surviving. I was rebuilding myself piece by piece. I bought a nice present for Tommy, a Lego set I knew he would love, and drove to my sister's house with my heart beating fast, but my head held high. The house was full of people when I arrived. Family members, Rebecca's friends, parents of Tommy's classmates, superhero-themed decoration everywhere, music playing, children running and screaming excitedly. It was surreal to be there, in that familiar but at the same time completely strange environment now. I saw my mother right at the entrance, and she hugged me tight, whispering, "Thank you for coming," in my ear. I saw some uncles and cousins who greeted me with that uncomfortable way of people who know about the drama but don't know what to say. And then I saw Tommy. He was playing with some friends in the backyard when he saw me through the window, and his little face lit up completely. He came running, screaming, "Aunt Sarah! Aunt Sarah!" and threw himself into my arms with that tight child hug that almost knocked me down. At that moment, all the doubts I had about coming disappeared. Seeing that boy's genuine joy reminded me that some things are bigger than our personal pains, that true love transcends betrayals and hurts. "I thought you weren't coming," Tommy said, holding my hand tightly as if afraid I would disappear again. "You disappeared, Auntie. Why did you disappear?" My heart broke again, differently, but it still hurt. "I'm sorry, champ," I said, crouching down to his height. "Auntie was going through some problems, but I wouldn't miss your birthday for anything in this world." I gave him the present, and he tore the paper all excited, screaming with joy when he saw the Legos. He hugged me again, and I held tight, letting that pure child love heal a little more of my wounded soul. That's when I saw her. Rebecca was at the kitchen door, standing still, looking at me with an expression that mixed hope, fear, and regret. She looked different, thinner, with deep dark circles, hair without its former shine. It seemed the last 6 months had been hard for her too, but I couldn't feel sorry. Our eyes met for a long moment, and it was as if all the party noise disappeared. There were so many unsaid things between us, so much weight, so much pain. She took a step in my direction, but I looked away, focusing on Tommy, who was showing me all his new toys. I wasn't ready for that conversation. Not there. Not on that day that should be about a happy child, and not about our family drama. The party continued, and I did my best to avoid Rebecca. I stayed playing with Tommy and the other children, talked with uncles and cousins about superficial things, ate a piece of the superhero cake, sang happy birthday. It was going well. I was managing to maintain composure, until it was time to open the presents. Everyone gathered in the living room, the children sitting on the floor in a semicircle, the adults around. Tommy was opening each present with that 7-year-old child excitement, thanking with hugs and smiles. When it was my present's turn, he showed everyone proudly, saying, "It's from my Aunt Sarah. She's the best aunt in the world." My heart filled with such pure, such true love, that tears came without me being able to hold them back. But then Rebecca stood up. "Tommy, honey," she said with a trembling voice, "before you open the last present, Mommy needs to say something important." The atmosphere in the room, tentar novamente bicontinuar, changed instantly. The adults who knew about the drama became tense. Those who didn't know became curious. I felt my stomach turn, a bad feeling taking over me. "Rebecca, don't," my mother said quietly, but my sister ignored her. She looked at me, tears running down her face, and said, "Sarah, I know you'll never forgive me. I know I destroyed everything, but you need to know the truth, the whole truth." My heart started beating erratically. What truth? What more could there be beyond what I already knew? Rebecca was trembling, her hands clenched at the sides of her dress, her face wet with tears. David, her husband, tried to hold her by the arm, saying, "Don't do this. Not here, not now." But she pulled away from him. Everyone in the room was in absolute silence, even the children sensing that something very serious was happening. I wanted to run out of there, but I was paralyzed, unable to move a muscle. "Say it already," I said with a voice I barely recognized as mine, cold and hard as ice. Rebecca took a deep breath, wiped the tears with the back of her hand, and said the words that destroyed everything again. "Mark didn't die in a car accident, Sarah. He killed himself. And he killed himself because he couldn't live with what he had done. Not just with me, with so many people. The world stopped. Literally stopped. I couldn't process what I had just heard. Mark was dead? He had died? When? How? And more importantly, why hadn't anyone told me? I looked at my mother, who had her hand over her mouth, crying. I looked at my uncles, who avoided my gaze. I looked back at Rebecca, who continued speaking, the words coming out in a desperate rush, as if she had kept this in for too long and couldn't take it anymore. "It was 2 weeks after you found out about us. He was destroyed, Sarah. Destroyed. He called me every day crying, saying he had lost the only true love of his life, that he couldn't live without you. I tried to help, tried to convince him to look for you, to fight for your marriage, but he said it was too late, that he had destroyed everything. I was hearing, but not processing. It was too much information, too much shock, too much pain." Rebecca continued, "And then he started telling me about other times, other women. Sarah, I wasn't the first. I wasn't even the second or third. Mark had cheated on you throughout your entire marriage, with several women. Co-workers, waitresses, random women he met at bars when he said he was working late. I was horrified when I found out, Sarah. You have to believe me. I thought we were special, that he truly loved me, but I was just another one. And when I confronted him about it, when I said you deserved to know everything, he lost it. He said he couldn't let you find out, that he couldn't live with the shame. Every word was a stab in my already shattered heart. My husband, the man I had loved completely, hadn't betrayed me just once. He had betrayed me hundreds of times. Our entire marriage had been one giant lie. 2 days after that conversation," Rebecca continued, barely able to speak between sobs, "the police showed up at my door. They had found Mark's car on a bridge, and he had jumped. He left a letter, Sarah. A letter confessing everything. The affairs, the lies, how much he loved you, but couldn't stop self-sabotaging. He begged for your forgiveness, even knowing he didn't deserve it. And then he jumped. The room was spinning. I couldn't breathe properly. My lungs weren't working. My heart was beating so fast I thought it would explode. Mark was dead. For months. And nobody had told me. Nobody had thought I deserved to know that my ex-husband had taken his own life. Why? I finally managed to ask, my voice coming out in a hoarse whisper. Why didn't anyone tell me? My mother approached, trying to touch me, but I recoiled violently. Don't touch me. Why did you hide this from me? My mother was crying hard, the words coming out choppy. We thought it would be better this way, honey. You were so hurt, so broken. We didn't want you to feel guilty, to think you were somehow responsible for his death. We just wanted to protect you, but they hadn't protected me. They had lied to me. More lies, always more lies. Everyone around me deciding what I should or shouldn't know about my own life. And you? I turned to Rebecca, a murderous fury burning inside me. You knew all of this, and still stayed silent? You didn't think I had the right to know that my husband was a serial cheater? That he had thrown away our entire life, not for you, but because he was a compulsive liar who couldn't keep his mouth shut? Rebecca was sobbing uncontrollably now. I wanted to tell you. I swear I wanted to, but Mom made me promise I wouldn't. And I felt so guilty, Sarah. So guilty. Because even knowing he was a liar, that he had used both of us, part of me still felt something for him. And when he died, it was like I had lost the right to feel anything. Because I wasn't the wife. I was just the mistress, the sister who betrayed her own family. David, who had been silent until then, finally spoke. Sarah, there's more. He looked at Rebecca with an expression that mixed anger and sadness. Tell her the rest, Rebecca. She deserves to know everything. Rebecca shook her head violently, but David insisted. Tell her about Tommy. My blood froze. Tommy? What did my nephew have to do with all this? Rebecca was pale, shaking her head, saying no, 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 repeatedly. But David, with a hard voice I had never heard from him before, said, Tommy isn't my son, Sarah. He's Mark's son. Rebecca was having an affair with Mark for years, since before Tommy was born, and she made me believe the boy was mine all this time. If I thought I couldn't be more shocked, I was wrong. Completely wrong. I looked at Tommy, who was in the corner of the room, confused and scared with all the adults yelling and crying. That beautiful boy, with those big brown eyes, that crooked smile I had always found so familiar. It was because he looked like Mark. Tommy was Mark's son. My nephew was actually my, stepson? Half-sibling of the children I had planned to have with Mark? It was too absurd to comprehend. I could barely form the words. You were together the whole time? Even before I met him? Rebecca was on the floor now, on her knees, crying hysterically. No, it wasn't like that. We had broken up when he met you. He told me he had found true love, that you were different from all the others. I tried to move on, married David, had Tommy, but then Mark came back saying he had made a mistake, that he still loved me. And I was weak, Sarah. I was so weak. I gave in, and we started seeing each other in secret again, and it was horrible, and I wanted to stop but couldn't. I was drowning in information, in revelations, in betrayals upon betrayals. My entire life had been built on lies. My marriage was a farce. My sister had betrayed me not for 8 months, but for years. My nephew, whom I loved as if he were my own son, was the fruit of this continuous betrayal. And Mark, the man I had sworn to love in joy and in sorrow, in sickness and in health, until death do us part, had chosen death to escape the consequences of his endless lies. I looked around the room, at all those people I called family, and saw strangers, liars, people who had decided I didn't deserve the truth about my own life. You destroyed everything, I said, my voice surprisingly calm despite the storm happening inside me. All of you, every single one of you. I looked at my mother. You, who chose to protect the lies instead of protecting me. I looked at Rebecca. You, who destroyed our family, our sisterly bond, everything, for a man who used you as much as he used everyone. I looked at David. You, who waited until now, until your son's birthday, to drop this bomb. And then I looked at Tommy, that innocent boy who wasn't to blame for anything, and my heart broke once more. I'm sorry, I said to him, tears finally running down my face. You didn't deserve any of this. I left that party, that house, that family, and never went back. I blocked everyone. I changed my number. Eventually, months later, I moved from Boston completely, accepting a teaching position at a school in Portland, Oregon, on the other side of the country. I needed physical distance. I needed to truly start from zero, in a place where nobody knew my story, where nobody looked at me with that mixture of pity and morbid curiosity. It was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, leaving everything behind, but it was also the most necessary thing. Because I understood something fundamental on that horrible birthday day. You can't heal in an environment that made you sick. You can't grow in poisoned soil. Sometimes the only option is to pull everything out by the roots and replant somewhere else. The first months in Portland were lonely, I won't lie. I had left behind everything that was familiar, all the places I knew, all the people who were part of my life. But in that loneliness, I found something precious, myself. The true Sarah, not the Sarah who was defined by being Mark's wife, or Rebecca's sister, or my mother's daughter, just Sarah. I started to rediscover who I was when nobody was watching, when there were no expectations or judgments. I discovered I liked waking up early and walking to a local coffee shop, where I became a regular customer, and the baristas learned my order by heart. I discovered I loved rainy days, which were frequent in Portland, and how nice it was to stay home reading a book with a blanket and a cup of hot tea. I discovered I was stronger than I ever imagined I could be, that I had survived betrayals that would have destroyed many people, and that I not only survived, but was starting to thrive again. I continued with therapy, now with a new psychologist named Dr. Karen, who helped me process all the layers of betrayal and lies that had been revealed on that day. It was long and painful work, peeling back each layer, understanding how I had been manipulated for so long, forgiving myself for not seeing the signs. But gradually, session after session, I was freeing myself from the weight of all that. I learned that betrayal says everything about who betrays and nothing about who was betrayed. I learned that true love doesn't hurt, doesn't lie, doesn't make you question your sanity or your worth. I learned that sometimes the people we love most are the ones who hurt us most, not because we are flawed, but because they are. And I learned that forgiving doesn't mean forgetting or allowing those people back into your life. It means releasing the anger that was consuming me inside, so I could move forward without carrying that weight. I made new friends in Portland, people who knew me as the post-everything Sarah, the version of me that had been tested by fire and came out stronger. I joined a book club, where I met incredible women with their own stories of overcoming. I started doing yoga, something I had never considered before, and discovered a peace in the movements and meditation that helped me more than I could have imagined. I even started dating again, eventually. Nothing serious at first, just casual dinners, trying to relearn how to open up to someone when you've been so deeply hurt. The first kiss I gave another man after Mark was strange, almost wrong, because part of me still felt like I was cheating, even knowing Mark was dead and our marriage had ended long before he died. But gradually, date after date, I relaxed, trusted a little more, allowed someone to enter my heart again. I met James at a school event. He was the father of one of my students. We started talking about his daughter, about education, about Portland, and suddenly we had been talking for hours about everything and nothing. He was kind, honest, and most importantly, he was patient with me. When I told him my story, expecting him to run away from the woman with so much baggage, he just held my hand and said, "Everyone has a story, Sarah. Yours is painful, but it's also a story of survival and strength. That makes you more interesting, not less." We started dating slowly, without rushing, building a foundation of trust and respect that I never had with Mark. James never gave me reasons to doubt him, never hid his phone, never lied about where he was, and for the first time in years, I was in a relationship where I could breathe, where I didn't live in a constant state of anxiety and distrust. 2 years after moving to Portland, I finally felt ready to have a conversation I had been avoiding with David, Rebecca's ex-husband. He had found me on Facebook, sending a simple message asking to talk when I was ready. I ignored the message for months, but eventually curiosity won. We scheduled a video call, and it was surreal to see his face after so long. He looked older, tired, but also more at peace. He told me he had divorced Rebecca right after that catastrophic birthday, that he had done a DNA test to confirm Tommy was really Mark's son, and that he was in a difficult legal battle over custody. "I still love that boy as if he were mine," David said with tears in his eyes. I raised him for 7 years, Sarah. He's my son in my heart. DNA doesn't matter. I understood perfectly, because I still love Tommy too, that innocent child caught in the middle of all that chaos. David gave me news I hadn't asked for, but part of me wanted to know. Rebecca was living alone in a small apartment, working at some random office, having lost most of her friends when the story came out. Our mother still kept in touch with her, but the relationship was tense, perhaps permanently damaged. Tommy was in therapy, trying to process everything he had discovered about his family, about who his father really was, about why so many adults in his life had lied to him. Hearing this broke my heart, but it also reinforced that I had made the right choice by walking away. I couldn't save anyone. I had barely managed to save myself. Each person involved in that mess had to walk their own path of healing, and mine had been solitary but necessary. Today, almost 3 years after that devastating birthday, I can look back and see how much I've grown. I won't lie and say everything is perfect, that I've completely overcome everything that happened. I still have difficult days, moments where the anger comes back, where sadness catches me by surprise. I still have occasional nightmares where I go back to that hotel room or to that birthday party, reliving those painful revelations. But those days are increasingly rare, and when they come, I know how to deal with them better. I have tools now. I have a solid support network. I have enough self-knowledge to recognize when I need help. And most importantly, I have self-love. Something I realized I never truly had during my marriage to Mark. I was so focused on being the perfect wife, on making him happy, on keeping our relationship working, that I completely forgot to make myself happy. I forgot that my happiness couldn't depend on another person, that it had to come from within. James proposed to me 3 months ago. It was in a simple moment, without all that pomp and circumstance that Mark had done. We were hiking on one of the mountains near Portland. We reached a beautiful lookout with a view of the whole city, and he simply turned to me and said, "Sarah, I want to spend the rest of my life making you happy. Will you marry me?" There was no ring at that moment, no hidden photographer, nothing planned. It was just him, me, and a genuine feeling of love and companionship that filled me with a quiet and true joy. I said yes. Of course I did. But this time it was different. I wasn't saying yes because I was desperate for a fairy tale happy ending. I was saying yes because I found a true partner, someone who sees me, respects me, and loves me in a healthy and honest way. Someone who built my trust brick by brick, instead of destroying it. We're getting married next year, in a small and intimate ceremony with just close friends. I thought a lot about who to invite, whether I would invite my family from Boston. Eventually, I decided to invite my mother, because despite everything, she's still my mother, and I understand she did what she thought was best, even though it was the wrong decision. But I made it clear that Rebecca is not welcome, and that if my mother tries to bring her or even talk about her at my wedding, she'll have to leave. My mother accepted the conditions, said she understands and respects, and that she just wants to see me happy. As for Rebecca, I don't know if I'll ever be able to completely forgive her. Maybe with more time, more therapy, more distance, or maybe not. And I learned that's okay too. Forgiveness isn't mandatory, especially when there hasn't been a genuine apology or real attempt at reparation. Sometimes the best way to forgive is simply to let go and move forward without that person in your life. Tommy sent me a letter a few months ago. I don't know how he got my address. Probably through my mother. The letter was short, written in that somewhat crooked, childish handwriting, full of spelling errors. He said he missed me, that he understood why I had left, and that when he grew up, he wanted to visit me in Portland. He said he was fine, that he liked his new school, that he had made new friends. And at the end, he wrote, "Aunt Sarah, no matter what everyone says, you'll always be my favorite aunt. I love you." I cried when I read that. I cried for everything we lost, for the relationship we could have had if the adults in his life had been honest and decent. But I also cried with gratitude, because despite everything, that beautiful boy still held love for me in his heart. I responded to his letter, telling him a little about my new life, sending photos of Portland, encouraging him in his studies, and I promised that when he was older, if he still wanted to, we could reconnect. Because Tommy wasn't to blame for anything, and he deserves to have people in his life who truly love him. I learned so many lessons in these last years, that it's hard to even list them all. I learned that trust, once broken, is almost impossible to completely rebuild, and that there's nothing wrong with protecting yourself instead of giving second chances to those who hurt you deeply. I learned that family isn't always blood, that sometimes the people you choose for your life are more loyal and loving than those you share DNA with. I learned that true love doesn't make you question your worth, doesn't make you walk on eggshells, doesn't make you feel crazy for suspecting the obvious. True love is calm, it's safe, it's honest. There are no games, no lies, no hidden agendas. I learned that I'm much stronger than I ever imagined I could be, that I can survive betrayals that seemed fatal, that I can rebuild my life from scratch and create something even more beautiful than I had before. And most importantly, I learned that losing someone, whether through death or betrayal, isn't always a loss. Sometimes it's a liberation. Sometimes it's the universe taking you off a path that was slowly destroying you and putting you on a path where you can finally flourish. Mark died believing I was the love of his life, but the truth is he never loved me the way I deserved to be loved. He loved me in the broken, selfish, and immature way he was capable of. And if he hadn't died, if we had tried couples therapy as he suggested in that hotel, I probably would have spent years trying to fix something that was fundamentally irreparable, diminishing myself, questioning myself, slowly destroying myself. His death, as tragic as it is, gave me the chance to start over, to find myself, to truly heal. Rebecca took away my husband, my trust in my family, my innocence, my sense of security in the world. But inadvertently, she also gave me a gift. She showed me who I really was when everything was taken from me. She forced me to become independent, strong, complete alone. If I were still in that fake marriage, in that toxic family dynamic, I would never have discovered the depth of my own strength, the extent of my healing capacity, the beauty of starting from zero. I'm not saying it was worth it, that I'm thankful for the betrayal. That would be a lie. It still hurts. It still aches. It probably always will hurt a little. But I'm saying I transformed that pain into fuel for growth, and that the woman I am today is infinitely more authentic, stronger, wiser than the woman I was before everything fell apart. Today, I know, with all certainty in my heart, that sometimes losing someone is finding yourself. It's freeing yourself from a version of yourself that was settling for crumbs when you deserved the whole banquet. It's closing a door that was leading you to a dark and lonely place, even if it seemed bright and promising from afar. It's accepting that not everyone who enters your life will stay, and that not everyone who leaves is a real loss. Some are blessings disguised as goodbyes. I'm still learning, still growing, still healing. But for the first time in a long time, I'm genuinely excited about the future. Not because of a man, not because of external validation, but because I finally found myself, accepted myself, and fell in love with myself. And nothing, absolutely nothing, can take that away from me. If this story touched you in any way, if you went through or are going through something similar, leave a heart in the comments so I know you're there. Share it with someone who needs to hear this, with someone who thinks they won't survive the pain they're feeling right now. Because you will survive. It will hurt like nothing has ever hurt before. It will feel like you can't take it for one more day. But you'll wake up the next day, and the next, and the next. And gradually the pain will become a little more bearable. The colors will return to the world. The smiles will become genuine again. And one day you'll realize you spent hours, maybe even a whole day, without thinking about the person who hurt you. And that will be the day you'll know you're really healing. Subscribe to the channel for more real stories like this. Stories of pain, but also of overcoming, of breaking, but also of rebuilding. Because life isn't a fairy tale where everything ends perfectly. It's a journey full of ups and downs, of joys and sorrows, of betrayals and triumphs. And sharing these stories, knowing we're not alone in our struggles, makes all the difference. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new stories. And always remember, you're never alone. No matter how lonely your pain seems, there are thousands of people who went through similar things, who would understand perfectly if you told them your story. And there's always, always hope for better days ahead. Tell me in the comments, which part of this story touched you the most? Have you ever gone through a betrayal like this? How did you deal with it? Have you ever felt betrayed by family? Where are you watching this story from? I want to get to know each of you. I want to know your stories too. I want to create a community where we can be vulnerable, honest, and real with each other. Because in the end, that's what heals us. True connection, genuine empathy, knowing that our pain is valid and that our strength is real. Thank you for making it this far, for listening to my whole story, for caring. That means more to me than you can imagine. Until the next story, and remember, you're stronger than you think, more resilient than you imagine, and you deserve all the true love and all the happiness in the world. Don't accept anything less than that. Never.